In this video, I'm going to assess the damage on this Fleece cheatah turbo that failed. This turbo originally worked, but the guy tried to rebuild it and it just completely blew up. In this video, I'm just going to kind of assess the damage to show you what needs to be replaced. The turbine shaft is here because it completely shattered off. The turbine wheel shattered off the turbine shaft. If you take a close look at the shaft, you can see that the piston ring seal locked up onto the shaft, and it's got a spot right there where the piston ring seal is actually bent up into the shaft, and you can see where the piston ring tried to work its way off of the shaft. What I think happened is that piston ring was most likely bent, and it just locked up at a high rate of speed all of a sudden. And then this stopped suddenly, and the inertia of the turbine must have ripped itself off of the shaft. Here's the thrust bearing. I thought this was interesting because if you look at it, it's bent, but it's bent in a weird way. So this part sits down towards the turbine. So this, when that shaft broke, the shaft like pulled this collar and spacer towards the exhaust side really hard and bent it downward. I've never seen that happen before. I've seen it happen where it pushes it up towards the compressor wheel, but I think that's really neat. I'm going to assess what's here and what's not. There's supposed to be two of these things. So what this guy wants me to do is he wanted me to try and repair this, but if I don't have all the pieces, it's hard to give him somewhat money for a core or to try and fix this turbo. This plate I think is probably fine. You can check the gap right here with the piston ring. You put it right in there. All that looks fine. Here's a lot of damage from where that turbine broke into pieces. It doesn't look like there's anything wrong on the outside other than it just being scuffed up really bad, but this area right here has got to be machined out and then sleeved and then machined back out, which I don't really see that being a problem because I have the machine tools to do it. It's just the amount of time involved in doing something like that. Here's the bushings where the nozzle slides in. Those are both going to have to be replaced. There's supposed to be a piston ring that sits right here. He didn't send that back, I guess, and I need that to assemble a complete turbo. This is a piston ring right here. That actually is locked up for some reason. That may have been part of the problem. That nozzle may have jammed or something, I don't know. I kind of wonder if that impact right there has damaged the bearing housing to make it tighter on that piston ring. Here's the compressor housing. There's really nothing wrong with the compressor housing, but he didn't send the compressor wheel. So this compressor housing may be worthless without the wheel, because on the Cheetah they're much taller than the 67 compressor wheel that I have. Even though the Cheetah, this one had a 63 compressor, the 67 wheel that I have is like this area of the radius is different. So the back of this radius area will be right, but in the middle it won't match up to the compressor wheel. So I may be able to machine this part down to be able to meet up and make it right, but I don't know if it's possible. I've tried it before, but I never really thought about moving it in like 20 thousandths, because if you do that, then this V-band clamp will get to the point where it won't compress anymore if you keep moving it in so far. So here's the box that it came in, marked as damaged. It looked just like this when I received it today, so I don't know if there's other parts that are missing that are supposed to be in here. The other things to think about is, well, I don't have a clamp for the exhaust housing or compressor housing, so I can't build a whole core without those pieces. And then he left his oil feed on there, so I need to pull that off there. Here's a close look at the turbine shaft and where it fused to the piston ring. This area right here is where the split is in the piston ring. This was a staggered seal. You can see the two staggered ends right here. What's interesting is that the piston ring started to open up before it fused itself to the shaft, which means that it it must have tried to come off the shaft before it fused itself to the shaft. And if this piston ring was bent at all, it would have fused itself at the bent spot, because that's where it would have been having friction of the piston ring up against the shaft. Where it broke on the backside, usually that doesn't happen. Usually if it fuses itself, it will fuse itself and then just get stuck to the turbine. But somehow the piston ring was able to break free and then be thrown out of position. This is a really costly mistake for a turbo that only had a nozzle issue to begin with. But I'm going to show you how I'm going to fix this. So if you're interested in watching that, then I suggest that you subscribe to see future videos.